few minutes late, technical issues as always with the live feeds, blah, blah, blah. But we're here now. Let me refresh YouTube because it always says you're connected and then you're not. I don't trust YouTube. Let me refresh again. And we're live. Let me take the sound off. So, good morning, good afternoon, good night, depending on the time of the day you're watching this, because as you know, this is not a show about comics or art. This is a show about time traveling. In this case, with Charles. Hello, Charles. How are you?
Good. How are you doing, David? Very nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. It's here is 5 p.m. in Spain. It's 11 a.m. in New York. If I'm correct. So we are just morning. If you see different lights, that's why. In like 5 minutes, you're gonna see this starts to dim, and then it's going to, he's going to need sunglasses. No, I'm kidding. So most important, as I always say before I start, to all of you, wear your fucking mask. We were talking before we started, Charles and I I always talk too much and that's why we start late. So this is very important. Please use your mask. The mask is not meant to protect you. It's meant to protect others from you. That's the main point. They protect you, that's true, but that's not the main point. We have to use them to protect everybody else. We have to care for people. Have to be, something that is called decent. Have to be decent and care for others. And by the end of the day, that's all that matters. We have to care for our kids, for our elders. And if somebody tells you that the kids don't get COVID, that's a lie. And they can die. Doesn't matter how old or how young you are. We all have to be careful and care for each other. And last but not least, as I always said, and I know the numbers are going to fall, and I don't care. I always say this because it's important. If you don't care about anybody else's safety and you think your freedom is more important, blah, 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 and that's why you don't wear a mask, please leave this channel now because I don't want you here. With all that said, hello, Charles. Hello again. How are you? How's the family? How's everything? How's New York? Is it getting better or still, oh my God, oh my God?
Well, people need to wear masks here too. Although New York City was the first place that was hit hard by the pandemic. And so New Yorkers in general are better about it than I think many parts of the country. But it's still horrendous. I mean, compared to almost any place else in the world, it's by far the worst. And it's just staggering. I don't know. It's just funny to think. A year ago, we were just starting to see the news stories about this thing, and I remember I was in Los Angeles, and I had just announced with my colleagues sort of what the whole Project Luminous thing was for Star Wars. We announced the High Republic in this big fancy event at Disney headquarters, and I did not realize that would be my last trip anywhere. I mean, for a year and counting. And I used to travel just like you used to travel constantly. Like I was places really every 2 weeks, basically. I would go someplace new, whether for work or for a comic convention or any number of things. And it's been very strange to sit in one place. But as you said, this is what this is the choice you make. And this is about being decent, and it's about taking care of other people, and obviously taking care of my own health and my family's health, but also the, everyone else out there. Because the last thing you would want to do is have in your heart the idea that a choice you made caused somebody else to be sick or die. And so for me, it's an easy decision. Obviously, I, wear masks and all that, but I definitely do look forward to when this is all over. The States has been hit really hard by this, and I think it'll be great when life comes back to some kind of normal.
Yeah, but right now, what I'm loving is Biden said this is how fast vaccination is going to go, and he's making it happen. I'm seeing the numbers, and all the task force he's put in place. That's what makes me so frustrating compared, to the impeached guy.
Yeah.
The orange skin baboon. You see, he could have made it not with the vaccines because they weren't ready yet, maybe, but with safety measures. And now Biden is saying, no, the task force is going to do this, and that. Let's go, and it's happened.
Yeah, look, I think this needed a nationwide response. It needed a federal level response.
Yes.
And when you look at countries that had a response that was coordinated across the whole country, whether it's South Korea or there's lots of nations where it's been handled pretty well. And we just didn't have it. We had it state by state. We had it sort of, town by town almost. And that's not going to work because it's just obviously it wasn't going to work. It left too much up to individual choice and decision. And this was not the kind of crisis that could be solved that way. So I think it's very clear how the results have changed when you have a federal leader, a president, who is willing to take responsibility for the consequences of his own actions. You know, like the last guy didn't want to be involved, and you could tell because he didn't want to get something wrong, and you know, it just wasn't it wasn't about him, right? That was a crisis that was about other people, and he is not equipped to think about other people. And so here we are in this terrible situation that has been going for a year and counting. So I don't know, we'll see what happens, but I agree that it feels like the federal leadership is taking a much stronger role in trying to end this crisis, which is very refreshing. And, you know, whatever your politics are, I think we all want this to be over with.
Absolutely.
And, you know, it's just good to see somebody who's trying to get a handle on it.
I love your phrase. He's not equipped to think about other people. That's a perfect definition of that guy, like the perfect one. Wait, imagine. Okay, I just changed my name. From now on, my name is Dr. Victor Frankenstein. Are you doctor? This pentel here is your, vaccination.
Right.
I just popped it into you a couple times. Pfizer, Moderna. You pick the one you want. You're vaccinated. We're free. Pandemic is over right now. And I'm going to ask you, what's the thing you've been dying to do for the last 6 months, saying the moment I get vaccinated, that's going to do first?
I probably would go to a bar in the middle of the afternoon with a notebook, and I would sit there and I would slowly have a beer or a cocktail for 3 hours, and I would just work on a story, because that's something with just a pencil and my notebook and just thinking, because I used to do that all the time. It was a way that I got my work done, and I loved the energy of it. I loved the fact that maybe you would have a conversation with somebody if you took a little break. Maybe, just the energy of it was very, very useful to me and important to me. And now, I mean, I haven't done that in a year, and it's another one of those things where, I have a wonderful, it's very quiet and calm here. I can get writing done. It's beautiful, but losing that energy has really hit me. It's harder to motivate, and every day sort of seems the same, as we all know. So I think that is what I would do first. And then once I finish that, I would go to the movies, because I am a big, huge movie watcher, and I can watch them on my TV. It's fine, but going to the theater and having popcorn and all of that, it was something I did usually at least once a week. So losing that is really hard.
But it's never going to be the same, right?
I know.
With that thing that HBO Max is trying on Warner of having the movies at the same time on TV that in the cinemas, thinking that it's going to be like a substitute. It's never going to be the same. You give me Godzilla versus Kong, to give you just like extreme examples, like, are you going to watch that on TV? No, I'm not.
No. But David, I think the number of theaters might be reduced. There might not be as many, but that experience is so unique that it definitely is not going anywhere. People will still go to the movies. There will still be movies to see. But then after I got out of the movies, I would go to the airport and I would fly someplace wonderful. And I don't know what that place would be, but I would just travel somewhere and see some new shores, some new horizons. And those would be the things that I would do. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, I was joking with the wife that when this is over, first thing we're gonna do with the kid is just go into to the airport and tell her pick. The
Anywhere.
Pick. We don't care. But where? No, we don't care. We just want to go get out. Maybe some places in the country, maybe some other continent. You pick the place, and that's where we go, because we're so dying to go back to traveling. You're talking to me. If you asked me a year ago, oh, do you miss traveling 18 hours in a plane every month, or 16 or 15 or 11? I would be like, not a chance. But now you're like, yeah, I miss it.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny, because I think, you and I had similar, we were on what I call the circuit, so we would, whether it's conventions or going to the offices or going to meetings or whatever it was, we would, bump into each other at places and see each other at conventions. And, it was the circuit, and it was because conventions at that time, that's another thing. I don't know how it's going to come back, but at that time there was a major convention at least once a month, and sometimes more than once a month.
Yeah.
And so you could, I was doing probably 10 to 12 shows per year, plus sort of outside writing retreats at different places, plus travel for myself, like vacations, plus, so I don't think I was ever I was rarely in the same place for 3 weeks at a time. And it got very exhausting, and I don't know that I want to go back to that, but, I miss the experience. You go up and you you sit in the airport, and maybe the airport lounge if you have a pass or whatever, and you have a cup of coffee and you wait for your plane to board, and then you get on the plane and you get all settled, and you decide how you're going to spend your plane flight. Are you going to read a book? Are you going to do some work? Are you going to watch a movie? I don't know. I miss getting frequent flyer miles accumulating so that I can take a fun flight myself. All of these things. It's a part of life. Life is not, I'm healthy. I have lots of good work to do. My family's safe. Everything's okay. But those things, we can get tired of them when we have too much of them. But man, I miss them. I miss them very much.
Yeah, you don't miss them until you lose them, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But don't rush your drinking. People can wait. Do you remember what's the last movie you went to watch before this started to the theater?
Yes, it was Birds of Prey. It was the last movie I went before COVID started. But I was actually fortunate because during the pandemic, there's a theater. So I'm in New York. Connecticut is the next state over, and there was a theater that was playing Tenet, and they let you reserve your seats ahead of time. And they had a show on like a Wednesday afternoon at 1:30 p.m. And I was like, you know what? I'll see. It was in a small theater, so I bought a seat, and I just kept looking to see if anybody else was going to buy a ticket to that screening, and nobody did. So, and I just kept checking. And so I ended up going and seeing that movie by myself, alone, with a mask on, in the theater. So I did get to see one movie during the pandemic, but other than that, everything's been at home. So yeah, the last one was Birds of Prey, which I thought was great. If you have to go out on a movie, that's not so bad.
I've watched two during the pandemic because here they opened in after the first wave. I think we had like as you know, a very strict lockdown in Spain for like three and a half months. So they opened right more or less when Tenet was supposed to open. So I made a deal with my wife. So I had to suffer, and I will say it, suffer Scooby-Doo.
Okay.
With my kid, I love the characters, the movies just. Let's leave it there. And then so she went to watch Tenet that weekend, and then the next weekend I went to watch it. So that's the only. So I have to watch Scooby-Doo to be able to watch Tenet. So that's okay. Did you like Tenet? What?
Did you find it scary? I guess a little bit, or intimidating, or anything when you in the film? Yeah.
No, I just thought it was dumb.
Oh no! I mean, when you were in the theater, the experience of being in the movie.
No. Because I don't know how it is in the US, but here there's very strict rules also for theaters, and they can apply two ways. I've gone to two theaters because I never watch movies that are dubbed. Literally, nothing, and not even TV. Everything in any language, I always watch it on the original language. In some cases, I need subtitles, Japanese, Chinese, etc. In English, French, and Italian, and others, I just don't use the subtitles. But that's how I went to watch Tenet. But then we have another theater, which is the funniest part, like 100 yards from home.
Oh yeah,
but I never go because it's a dub one.
Right. I see. Yeah.
Theater, what they do is the moment you reserve a ticket, the algorithm automatically separates for chairs around you.
Yes.
So it's front, side, back. So it's never around you. And the other company, what they do is they assign in advance. I mean, you can see the seat map in the theater and pick, based on there's two seats together, one seat together in different parts. So it always looks safe. And the other side is that you can buy, I guess the same in the US, you can buy the popcorn or whatever you get in advance, so you don't even have to visit the store. You just go and pick it in a window and go in. It always looks safe. You could notice it was colder
because not as many people.
And the air conditioning.
Cycling through.
You could hear because it was put in a, I don't know, at the max. So the air flew a lot more. So you could hear in a way you could hear the noise. But it was like, you know what? I don't care if I hear the noise of the air conditioning. That means they're working for my safety.
Yes.
So I never felt uncomfortable. Did you with watching Tenet? Did you feel uncomfortable?
No, I felt, I would say, unsettled almost and sad, a little bit sad because at the theater, like there was no one in the park. Like movies, you know, movies are a communal experience. They're an experience to be had with other people, and there was no one in the theater. There were, I think, 4 people working there. These young people who were, you know, I'm glad they had some work to do. They had a job, but the concessions were the food, the popcorn, all that. It was empty. There were all these posters all around for movies that were supposed to come out that never came out. Ghostbusters, whatever.
Yeah.
Doom. So that was sad. And I just it just felt like a ghost town. It felt like going to a haunted place. And so I liked it because I love going to the movies and I like the big sound, and I'm glad I could get that private screening. Basically, that felt really kind of lucky to have this taste of this thing I love so much. But it also made me sad, and I have not tried to do it again, really. But I don't know. I would love to. I got a projector instead, so you can get a projector and have like a big screen. So it's not the same as going to the movies, but it's still, it's bigger than my TV. So I'll do that sometimes.
Absolutely. My wife went to watch with her kid. They want to watch Wonder Woman because it opened in theaters here.
Yeah.
She said the same thing. It was like, I wanted our kid to enjoy it. To have other kids in cosplay, fun and all that. But I was like, how many people? Like, no, it was four people. And of those 4, 2 was us.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was like, they're not even going to the movie, but the experience of enjoying the movie, of seeing people clapping or whatever, we didn't have it. And this is one of the movies. It's like watching Avengers Endgame.
Yes.
Without an audience, when
No, I know.
When he does the like
the Thor's hammer,
getting the hammer.
Yep.
And not having anybody around to clap with you or gel with you.
Yeah. Well, this is a year. It's a year of loss. It is, and the scale of the loss varies drastically for different people. Some people are losing everything they have, their lives. I'm not going to say that these losses don't affect me, right? Because I think there's a mental health cost. There's a lot of things, but I must keep perspective. Everyone must keep perspective. And I think, as you said at the beginning, make choices to make it end as quickly as possible. And I just remember, any little loss I might be feeling, whether it's the movies or anything else, I'm feeling that loss to make sure other people don't feel a much more significant loss, which is either their life or the life of a loved one. So I can complain a little bit. I can miss going to the movies. I can miss popcorn, whatever. But grand scale, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's what we call first world problems.
Oh, very much.
We can complain because we have first world problems, but then we have to remember that a lot of people is having having it much worse than we are. You just said it. Like 4 people working in a theater. How much people has lost their work,
lost their jobs. Yeah, no, I know. It's a huge problem here. And again, though, it seems like that is something that the new administration cares about deeply and is trying to change. I was just reading an article yesterday about how we're trying to get back to what's called full employment here in the States, which is basically the idea is that everybody who wants to have a job can have a job. And so it's not everybody's working, but if you want a job, there's a job available for you, which is it's a hard target to reach. And hopefully it will happen. But we'll get through it. We have the vaccines. We'll get through it. We're already seeing the numbers go down. It'll be okay. It's just long.
Yeah. And when do you think that everybody's making bets here, so you have to be part of the bet? When do you think conventions are coming back?
I think there will be a convention held in the fall.
That's
I don't know who will go to it. I am not I am not going to do another show until I'm vaccinated, of course. I don't know when I will get vaccinated. I think my guess is that for me, that will be something like July or August.
Yeah, same thing. Our group, I think you and I are more or less the same age.
Yeah.
Our group is here is supposed to be 70% of the population by July, August.
Yeah.
And that's when our group, they're not risk, whatever. That's when it will be our turn. So I guess.
Yes. So I think, it's, you get a shot, you get a second shot, and I think that a lot of the distribution issues that we're seeing and the manufacturing issues that we're seeing with these vaccines will be solved because, the nice thing about it is that it's a money issue for these companies,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like
Oh,
the
yeah.
more of these, the more of these they can sell, and the quicker they can sell it, the more money they make. And so they're going to solve these problems, right? If there wasn't money involved, it would be different, but there is. So I think by the summer, it will all be very efficient. You will be able to get an app on your phone that says where you need to go and when, and you do it, and it's fine. So, it will be okay, but it's also, I don't know, would I do a show? I would do a show. And if I was vaccinated and I felt like a lot of the country had been vaccinated, all of that. But we're not there yet. So I'm making no promises to myself until actually stuff starts to happen.
No,
But
I was talking the other day, with I think it was Rebirth, and we were discussing that. Conventions. Imagine you have two choices. You have the San Diego Convention Center, which is really open.
Yeah.
And you have the sea. You have a lot of places to go around and to build the stuff as they do, offsite. And then you have the Javits.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what would you pick? It's like, I would never pick the Javits. I'm sorry.
Never. And you look at pictures. I mean, I'm sure you have the same kind of photographs in your phone that I do of what happens at the Javits Center near Comic-Con. Yeah. It is. People are this close to each other, and for days at a time. Like trying to get through Artist Alley, the whole thing. It's crazy. And so, in order to make that feel safe. Because the thing is, let's say everyone in the country is vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that we're all going to feel like happy about being that close to people again. It's going to feel weird. So does that mean that New York Comic-Con sells only 50,000 tickets on purpose? Like they limit it to that. And so people can come, but it doesn't feel the same way. And like, so they don't have as much money to spend on the talent to come. And people who are doing Artist Alley don't make as much money, and it just becomes a different thing. Maybe that's okay because it's for how we feel. It's for public health, and we had our good years. Everybody did really well at those conventions, and maybe it just has to shift for a while.
Yeah.
We'll see.
It could move to. Some people are suggesting to me, because as you know, I organize conventions all over Europe. People are suggesting to do it in 2 consecutive weekends with different audience, meaning
different talent.
You have different talent and you have different people. If you have attended the show the first weekend, you can't attend the second, and explain that to people. You have to do a good amount of explanation saying, look, that's the only way we can keep the convention alive, and that's the only way we can get 100,000 people into it, because if we repeat the same amount of people, we have to limit the people that's coming to the show.
The other thing too, that you've been to Thought Bubble in the UK, right? In Leeds. Great show, really like it. Or Angoulême, is another good example. And they do not everything, but they have a lot of programming and even Artist Alley and different things outside.
Yeah.
So I know that that's risky because you have to worry about the weather and the rain, perhaps. But make a tent. Make a big open-sided tent, and then like at least for the first few years. And I think a lot of us would feel much better about doing a show like that, where it's maybe a little more limited. It's in maybe a fairground, so it's outside. Because Javits Center just feels. It feels crazy. It feels too much. Like
I'll always tell the same anecdote about that. When my wife and I got married, I could say 19 years ago this October. She had never come to New York. I have gone to New York several times for work, but so she's decided, okay, this is when I want our honeymoon to be. And she's an architect. She doesn't work as an architect now. She works in comic now, but she was an architect back then. And she said, of course, I want to visit the Javits because I want to see the convention center in New York because it was part of her work. So we go to the Javits, and I didn't understand. She was like all the time like this. And I was like, oh, okay. So we end up, was a quick, and says, okay, now after the quick go around, I'm going to go slowly with you. I'm going to explain things. And literally every 15 seconds, he was saying, that would be illegal in the European Union. That would be illegal. That would be illegal. So she pointed like 20 things. And I was like, I have to come here every year for a show, right? And she was like, why? Because from now on, every time I come here, I'm going to start thinking all the time, that would be illegal. That would be illegal. That would be illegal.
I think there is no comic creator who goes to that convention who has not thought about, oh my God, what if a fire breaks out? Or, oh my God, what if something terrible happens? We've all thought about it because it's too many people. San Diego's the same way. It's too many people, and there aren't enough. This is getting grim, and it's getting a little intense. But I understand the choices that are being made. It's money, right? People want as many, and it's good times, and people want to have the experience and all of it. If you can sell 200,000 tickets, which is what New York was starting to do, sell 200,000 tickets. But that space is not built for 200,000 people, and it gets scary. It gets difficult to do it. Like I end that show so drained. Like I don't want to move for 2 days.
Yeah.
And is that good? I don't know if that's good. Maybe it's good. I'm not sure. But I don't think it's going to be that way. And if they do that show in October, it's not going to be like that, which is probably, we'll see how it's done a different way. Maybe
absolutely. And it's also a part of it that we were already seeing, which is, San Diego, and in a smaller way, but they had to do it, they were both taking the con outside.
Yeah.
Because the space inside, didn't work at all. It wasn't enough. So I think that this thing is going to do exactly, the pandemic is going to cause exactly what you just mentioned, which is, if we needed to move out before, now we needed a lot more, right? So it's just going to exacerbate what we already knew, which is we need to get the convention out of the convention, going to public spaces, to squares, etc., or to other occasions, as the New York Comic Con did with the Madison Square Garden or something like that. We need to go out, to make it more part of, as we tried to do it in Europe, as with Angoulême, with Italy, with Spain. We like to make it part of the cities of the city's experience, right?
I went to a show in Buenos Aires in Argentina. It was actually the actual town is called Rosario. It was Eduardo Rizzo put on a show down there. Yes. And they did it that way too. And I had never been to Rosario. But it was, there was a show space where the artist alley was and so on, but there were also just so many different little places, galleries and exhibits, and it gave you a reason to go, and even little like dinners and events, and it gave you a reason to see other parts of this place, to see other parts of Rosario, which I thought was really just very cool. And I think there's many ways to do shows, and the American model, like many American things, is about more, pack it in, do as much as we can. And there's a place for that, and it's fun and it is exciting, but I don't know how it's going to work in a pandemic year. Did you hear that Image and Skybound are thinking about doing a cruise ship convention?
Yeah. Well, like Wizard did in the past and all that. So it couldn't be the first one. And I think like Jimmy and Amanda and some others did that like 3 or 4 years ago. I remember.
Yeah, I was on that. There was one. It was called Fan 2C. And I did that one, and I had a blast. I loved it. I thought it was really fun. I think it was my first time on a cruise ship. I thought it was very interesting as an experience. But again, I wouldn't do that until I'm vaccinated.
That's what I was going to say. Could you repeat that now? It's like, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think they're thinking about maybe 2022, or like, people are planning for the world to be different. But I just, I think people will make different choices going forward when they're thinking about public health and how many people are packed together. And because, we have coronavirus now, but it's not the last one. There'll be something else.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So anyway,
I remember when they had John Bogdanov, Superman fame, he was telling me, I love Spanish culture. I love, how close you guys are together. You like to hug each other, blah, blah, blah. Like in Argentina and in all the Latin places, And he was like, I'm worried that the pandemic is going to change you. And I was like, nah, you don't know us.
Yeah.
We're just saving energy. That's what do you mean? If we are not hugging you now, when we can, we're going to hug you like fucking bears.
Another story from Argentina, when I was there, yes, very affectionate, lots of, kiss on the cheek, whatever. But one of the things, a thing that they did that I had never seen before was you would go to, and this is younger people, but we went out to the bar, we went out to the restaurant, we went out to the club, and they would buy big bottles of beer, like big ones. And then they would get like 2 small glasses. And those glasses would be shared around in the group. So everybody would just, here's a glass, have a sip, and then pass it to the next person. And so it was kind of like passing a joint, I guess, kind of, And I was like, oh, this is interesting. I don't know these people, and everybody's really nice, but it's a strange thing. And they didn't even sell small bottles of beer at this place. It was just only the big ones. And so, that's why I love travel, though, even though that was a little odd to me. You go to see how people do other things in different parts of the world. It's wonderful. But but anyway, yes, I know how the Spaniards like to
Yeah,
you know,
that's
get
that's
their
like
thoughts.
sharing a joint. That's just,
Yeah.
but with a small sip, like passing the joint. I've been in Argentina, but I never saw that. What you just told me, so that's interesting.
Yeah, I think it was because it was a group. They were younger, they're in their early 20s, and they graciously decided, oh, we'll have this older gentleman come along with us and have fun. But so I think they just, they didn't have as much money. Maybe, I'm not really sure. But for, you buy one big bottle and you share it around, as opposed to everybody having their own, and it's more cost effective. But in Argentina, I think, unfortunately, has been a country that has had a lot of economic issues in the past, and so, you maybe it's just how they have always done it, or maybe it's something that's evolved more recently. I don't know, but it's always, I've told that story many times, and it just that's why you travel, to see
To learn,
your assumptions about the way the world works are not necessarily the way the world works, and it's always kind of, it rocks you back a little bit, but it's always kind of joyful and fascinating.
Absolutely. So let's get into comics.
Yep.
Why did you decide to do comics? Why the masochistic component of saying, of all the choices I have, and you have a lot, and you've had a lot of careers, as we can, as people knows here. If you don't know, guys, Charles is not only doing comics, he's doing novels, he's a lawyer, and many other things. But of all the choices you had, why did you decide to do comics?
Well, comics appealed to me because it was, so I started, as you said, my first primary job was working as an attorney, and I did a lot of, I was very, I went to a great law school. I was working at a big, huge firm in New York City, and then I started my own immigration law practice in the States, in New York. And so I was doing very well with that, but I knew that I wanted to be a creative person and do creativity in my life as my primary source of income, if I could do it. And I knew that almost from the moment I graduated from law school. I got myself this very expensive law degree that I'm still paying off with student loans. But I knew really that I wanted to be creative, and I had done and still do a lot of music work. I, had done a lot of writing and different things, but I started writing a novel when I started practicing law. At the same time, I started writing a novel, because I thought, for my own sanity, I have to have some sort of exit plan from this. I have to at least think I'm working to get out of the law. And so I did that book, and it was good, but it was the first novel, and I was able to get an agent with it, but the book didn't sell. And so I found that extremely disheartening, because I'd spent years on it. I'd spent, I think, 3 years on writing this book. And then I was about halfway through my second book at the time, and I finished it and showed it to my agent, and he's like, "This, I'm sure this is great, but I am, I'm leaving the agency. Like, I'm not going to be an agent anymore." And I'm like, "Wait a minute." So I had no agent, which is you have to have an agent to get a novel published in the United States. And so I said, "God damn, this is now what, 5 years that I've spent on trying to make this happen through novels, and I have to have this gatekeeper person, this agent, like, in order to even get close." And so I started thinking about other creative forms that didn't have kind of the same level of gatekeeping. And music was an obvious one, but the thing is with music is you have to spend a ton of time on it. You have to have a really good band. You have to be really good yourself. You have to be sort of young, not always, but you have to be kind of young. And by this point, I was getting into my sort of late 20s, early 30s. And so my window to be a rock star was closing, at least that kind of rock star. And so I was still working as a lawyer, so I didn't really have the time. So it had to be something I could do on the side. So I had all these bullet points for things that I could maybe do that would allow me to have a creative career. And comics just sort of fell into my lap. Like, it checked all these boxes. I could do comics on the side while I was still practicing law. Comics is very hard, but it's also very, like, egalitarian in terms of the way that you break in. Because if you are good enough, and you have the talent, and you have the skill, and you have the willpower to get your projects made and seen and in the hands of people, you can get a career in comics. Like, you just have to want it badly enough and make all those choices, but you can do it. And there are, many people's stories kind of start the same way in comics, which is they get into indie comics, and then eventually they get recognized by Marvel or DC, and then they start doing bigger stuff, and then they start having whatever path they want. And that was mine. But mostly it came down to kind of analyzing creative paths and realizing that comics could let me in all I needed to break into comics was my own willpower, and talent, you know, and money and some other things, but mostly my own willpower. Whereas if you're going to get into movies, you have to, as a screenwriter, it's very, very difficult. You have to make your own film. You need a lot of other people. You need those things. If you're going to get into novels, I had learned you need a good agent. If you're going to, you know, I don't know, rock and roll, you have to have a band, and you have to have a lot of time to make that band great. And all of these things, like, they had these walls in the way that didn't work with my particular life, but comics did. And so I started going to comic conventions in around 2004, 2005 to understand the business better. My first comic convention was in Dallas, Texas, actually. And then I started going to message boards. So like the Brian Michael Bendis message board, Jinx World was a big one for me, right? And also, I mean, that was really the main one. And a lot of well-known comics creators today came out of that board. We all, like, Nick Spencer was on that, Jonathan Hickman was on that, Phil Hester, you know, lots and lots and lots of us were on that board. It was that board, Warren Ellis's board, and then a little bit later the Brian K. Vaughan board. It, like, generated so many writers and artists that you know today. It's kind of funny. And I don't know if those people are proud of that, or if they think, I'm sure I know Brian is, but I don't know about Warren and the other Brian. But it's just interesting how we found that community. And I think that community has moved to Twitter, but at that time, Twitter didn't exist. Social media wasn't really a thing. So we found each other and supported each other and gave each other advice that way, and met each other at shows. And, you know, Nick Spencer eventually gave me an introduction to Jim Valentino, who published my first Image book, 27, back in 2010, I want to say 2010 or 2011. And 27 led to another book, Strange Attractors at Archaea. And then that book led to where I sort of tangentially first met you, which was on Swamp Thing with DC.
Yep.
With Jesus Saiz, who is unbelievable. And we got, you know, as you know, we just got to work together again. And we've been trying to work together for so long, since Swamp Thing was such a great experience.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, Star Wars is a challenge. So for those listening, Jesus Saiz and I worked on a long Swamp Thing run in 2013 and 2014. Mm-hmm. And it was beautiful work. If you haven't read it or looked at it, just don't worry about my part. Just look at Jesus's gorgeous, gorgeous art. It's unbelievable.
That's not true. Your stuff was brilliant.
Well, we made a good team. Let's say that we made a really good team. And yeah, and so then shortly after that, I left to be an exclusive writer at Marvel, and so Jesus was at DC, so I didn't really have access to him for a while. And then he came over to Marvel, and I think we both wanted to work together again. But the way things go at these places, like, it doesn't always line up, and it can be challenging. But then last year, we finally got to launch the new Star Wars book together with the new #1. And his work is so good. And we did the whole first arc together, 6 issues. It's amazing. You know, he's moved on to other great books, but we got to work together again. And I'm so happy that we did. And I hope, you know, something else circles back and we can work together again on something. You know,
It'll happen.
I know he's amazing, and he seems to like working with me too. It's not just me.
He loves it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's probably watching now. He won't comment.
Yeah.
I know him. He won't comment. But the moment I told him I was going to have him, I'll be watching. So
good. Well, if he is watching, I can't wait until we get to tell more stories together. It's you find these artists who just can do it all. You know, they can. The work is beautiful. The storytelling is great. The detail, they're willing to put in the time to do the intricate, detailed pages. And best of all, they understand the story you're telling, so they can make innovations on their own that make the pages better in ways that I never would have thought of, and I didn't put in the script. But they understand why, you know, what I'm trying to do, and then they're like, okay, I'll use my artistic skill set to make it even better. And Jesus is absolutely one of those people. I would say I've been lucky to work with so many great artists, and he is top tier for me. So I would anytime he's willing. Especially if he's listening, he knows this.
He knows.
You know,
we talk. He knows. So, then you moved from something to Marvel, and now you've been working basically in comics aside from your creator own work. I mean, you've been working in the corporate world. Let's say it this way. You've been working for Marvel mostly, right? Since then. Yeah.
So I took an exclusive with Marvel in 2014 because they offered me Death of Wolverine, which was a massive A-list project for me, and I knew that if I could get that right, it would take me to the next level in my career. in a way that I really wanted. And so I just put my all into it. I had the wonderful Steve McNiven on art with that, Justin Ponzor coloring. Like, we really had a phenomenal team. Chris Eliopoulos lettered. So it was lightning in a bottle. It worked really, really well, and it gave me access to some really amazing projects after that, including a long run on Daredevil and She-Hulk and a lot of other things that I'm known for. And I actually see in the chat there's a question about Death of Wolverine, so I figured I might as well, since I'm talking about it, I might as well answer.
There you go. I was gonna ask you, since you started mentioning it, I was gonna ask you the question. So DC Comics se habla así. Saludos, Charles. Hello, David and Charles. You're amazing. Thank you. You're amazing too. And yes, I would like to ask Charles, did you write Death of Wolverine knowing that he'll be back eventually, and how to reverse that death?
The answer to that is that I did not know specifically that Wolverine would be back, but obviously eventually Wolverine was going to come back. It was like the easiest assumption in the world to make. I didn't know when, I didn't know how long. I think that Wolverine being dead for as long as he was, I think it was 4 or 5 years, is very significant in comics. It was
more than people expected.
Yeah, it was a long time. And so I feel like the story that Steve and I told really stuck, which is great. It made me happy. And I also know the way that comic superhero writer careers tend to go. And so the idea that I was still going to be around and in a position to write any sort of Return of Wolverine story, I wasn't sure. But I did have an idea for how Wolverine could come back. And you actually saw it in Return of Wolverine, which was when Kitty Pryde pulls him out of the adamantium with her powers. So I liked that, but ultimately all you ended up with was Wolverine's, corpse. It's his dead body. So the trick with the Return of Wolverine story we told was how to bring him back to life in a way that's interesting and cool and would be fun for people to read. So again, Steve and I got to work together there. Steve McNiven and I, and Declan Shalvey was also on board there. Laura Martin did a lot of coloring. It was a great project. But so the answer to the question is, I assumed he'd be back. I did not assume that I'd be telling that story, but I thought if I did get a chance to tell the story, that I had at least the way into it, which is that Kitty Pryde, which Shadowcat would pull him out of that statue, and we'd go from there.
Well, and you've been involved, or you are still involved, better said, with the Star Wars in many different ways.
Yes.
In comics and in novels, etc. Why? Did you like Star Wars that much, really?
Yes, I did. I think, I loved Marvel. I loved, Daredevil was a big deal for me, all these things. But for me, the number one has always been Star Wars since I was very little, 5 or 6 years old. It's always been Star Wars. That's what I would play with my brothers and my sister in the yard. We would dress up. We would hit each other with sticks, pretend they were lightsabers. We would dress up for Halloween as the characters. My dad would tell us bedtime stories about Star Wars, making things up. It was always number one. I would get the toys, everything. So when I had a chance to start writing Star Wars for Marvel in 2015 I did a Lando miniseries with Alex Maleev and Paul Mounts, and it went well. And so I basically told Marvel, I'll do any Star Wars you want me to do, I'll do it. And so I started getting different projects, getting bigger projects, and that led to now I have a very prominent place in sort of Star Wars writing, which I didn't expect to have, and I pinch myself about all the time. And I just, I just put out a novel with Star Wars called Light of the Jedi, which came out January 5th. And it was a #1 New York Times bestseller, which is sort of two dreams converging at the same time, because I've always wanted that to happen too, to be on the New York Times bestseller list and to debut at #1, which is unbelievable. And to do it with Star Wars, which is something I've loved so much, and to create kind of an all new set of characters and an all new era and have it be received as well as it has, it's really one of those dream come true situations that just makes me so happy. So yes, it's kind of always been Star Wars. I intend to stay with Star Wars until they won't let me anymore. Hopefully never. They'll always let me write Star Wars. And I'd like to do it in different ways too. Like I've done a lot of comics. I'm still doing a lot of comics. And I'm doing novels, but there's a lot of other ways to do Star Wars out there, from video games to TV, movies, all sorts of stuff. So I don't have any specific news about anything like that, but
no. I wasn't asking for news at all. I was just asking about your love for Star Wars. This is not that kind of show. Remember that.
Yeah.
We are just chatting. That's for the journalists out there, if there's any. But
Mhm.
the truth of the matter here is, do you see the chance, or would you like to make something crossover from the novels to the video games to the TV, whatever, to the comics? Do something that is multimedia, that you can work in all of them at the same time with a specific project?
Well, I mean, the High Republic is as close as I've gotten to that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So there is that. But the thing is, other than the High Republic, for those who don't know,
Yes,
is a huge new, like really gigantic new part of Star Wars that started on January 5th, as I said, with my novel. My novel, Light of the Jedi, started the whole thing off, which is very exciting. So it's about 200 years before any of the stories we've seen in Star Wars. So all of the Jedi feel very different. The Republic feels different. Space feels different. The characters are all new except for like Yoda is there and a few others, whatever. But basically it's an all new era, an all new time period of Star Wars, and it's being told through novels, comic books, young reader novels. There's a TV show that was announced called Acolyte, which is going to be taking place at the end of the High Republic period. There are so many things going on with it, and it's designed to all be part of the same story. It's all be interconnected. So the way that all the existing Star Wars stuff we've seen, whether it's Episode 7, connects to Rogue One in some ways, like all of these pieces are part of the same story. We're doing that as well with High Republic, except we're planning it from the beginning. It's not something that's going to be happening over 40 years. We know what the story is we're telling, and we're just plugging in all these pieces. So it is a massive multimedia thing. It's the biggest crossover, if you want to say, that I've ever been involved with. And it's so much fun because I'm not doing it by myself. There are 4 other main writers who work with me on it. It's me, Justina Ireland, Claudia Gray, Daniel Jose Older, and Kevin Scott, who are all amazing in their own way at Star Wars, different than me. So together we make this very rich and vibrant feeling for this new time of Star Wars, and it's very it makes me feel happy to be part of it. So yeah.
Now, I was asking for something really more specific that I don't think Siglain would ever allow, but I was asking, starting a story in the comics, continuing it in a novel, and then moving on with that same story to a video game or something like that. If that's part of the plan for High Republic, as I mean, the same story continuing from one media to the other, or you are thinking about the whole plan, and a novel tells one part of it, a comic tells another part of it,
Well, it is very much what you just described, though. So my stories in Light of the Jedi are followed up on in threads and other stories with other comics, or like the ending of Light of the Jedi flows directly into the High Republic #1 comic book. So it really is like a river that you can follow. It's all the same river going to the same place, but you can follow whatever little tributary you want to get there.
Blake Raybal says, love your comics, sir, especially She-Hulk. What are your top favorite courtroom drama movies that people don't know as much?
Put me on the spot. I like My Cousin Vinny. It's funny. I think people know that movie, but it's Joe Pesci and Marissa Tomei. It's great. That's a really fun one. Again, this isn't really unknown, but I think A Few Good Men is great because it shows sort of the military tribunal side of things, which is interesting to me as an attorney because it has more going on. There's a film called Gridlocked that had Tupac Shakur in it, which isn't really a courtroom drama. It's more a bureaucracy movie about like people who kind of get caught up in the system of like, they're just trying to fix like a parking ticket, and it goes way out of control and spirals into nothing. And that's a good one too. So I don't know, something like that. As a lawyer myself, I don't always seek out law-based entertainment because it's too much of my own life as it is. But I know there's wonderful things out there. I've seen most of it.
Yeah, that's like asking doctors, what are your favorite TV shows about doctors? Like, I have enough of that in my life,
Yeah, exactly.
At home, I try to watch other things.
Yeah, totally.
Let me see. Pedro de Mercader, hello, Charles. Love the idea of making Kingpin the mayor. It was your response to the orange one?
I think it was certainly a comment on the way that people can vote for people when they don't really understand who they're voting for. Okay. And I think the political process is complicated. It's complicated all over the world, not just in the United States. I think democracy is definitely the best way to do it, without any question. But the public image of a politician is not always that closely connected to how they're going to do the job and how well they'll do it and any of those things. And so that is why I think it is important, really important, to try to choose leaders who have some experience in what they're doing, and have at least some claim to being able to do a good job with it. And I think in many places all around the world, there have been examples of, call them celebrity leaders, or people who get elected because they're very good at appealing to the people. And that's important, right? You need to be a leader. But at the same time, I would not ask someone who was charming and made me feel good to talk to them to do heart surgery on me, just because you can convince me that you're a good person doesn't mean you actually have the skills, and so on. So, I think the Kingpin arc, certainly political issues were on my mind because of what was going on in the world, but I think it's really more about the way that politicians are able to, some politicians, not all, there are good politicians, but sometimes politics can become more of about image than it is about substance.
Yeah, absolutely. He also asked, what were your inspirations for Blind Spot? It was hard to make a sidekick for such a solitary character?
Yes, it was. I wanted to do it because Daredevil hadn't had it. And when you jump into one of these legacy characters that's been around for so long, I think it was important to me to try to do things that were new. And so my list of things were get his secret identity back, give him a lot of law practice, because in the last several runs that it had gotten away from that. But as a lawyer, I wanted to write the law stuff. So I wanted to take him to the Supreme Court, which I did. And then I thought giving him a sidekick, not really a sidekick, but an apprentice, somebody who he could teach.
Drink.
Because one of the things about Daredevil that is not always true with other characters is that who taught him most of what he knows. It was Stick.
Yep.
And we have kind of this legacy of him being taught, but we don't have any real legacy of him teaching others. And so I thought the Blind Spot could be a really interesting way to do that. I wanted to make Blind Spot an immigrant, a particular type of immigrant, a DACA kid who kind of was brought to the United States illegally by his mother and has grown up here his whole life as an American, but doesn't have legal status, which was just an interesting type of person that I wanted to write about within the Marvel Universe and represent. But then, and I just thought it could be cool if they happened to be, Asian American, truly Asian American, so born in China but raised in America. It just brought a lot of things that I thought were interesting into the Marvel Universe in a way they hadn't been before, and into Daredevil's story in a way they hadn't been before.
Tim Burnham says, hello, gentlemen, great conversation. I haven't had an opportunity to check out your Star Wars material yet, but love your Daredevil run. Congratulations on the Omnibus coming out in August.
Yes.
That's got to be a big one.
It is. Well, so Tim, I know him on Twitter. I see his tweets he talks about Daredevil on Twitter, and I know he's big into sort of following the various collected editions that Marvel puts out. And so actually most of the information I have about what this omnibus is going to look like comes from his Twitter feed. And so I learned yesterday that the book is going to be 1,216 pages. And I can't even imagine how big that will be as a book.
This one, which doesn't exist in the US, just so you know, this is the full, let me see, Legion of Superheroes 5 years later.
Yes.
The Keith Giffen and Tom and Mary Bierbaum. This is the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's 960 pages.
Oh my God. Okay, so it's another third bigger than that.
Yeah, so if you take this one.
Yeah, and a few more. Yeah.
This is your book, probably.
Yeah, that's going to be heavy. But I'm excited. It's expensive. It's $125, but it has the whole thing. It has the whole story, and I think the fact that they're doing it it's one of those. It's a prestige thing for me a little bit, and for Ron Garney, who did a lot of that work on that book with me. Many other artists were there too. Phil Noto helped me end it in a beautiful way. Goran Suzuka did a lot of great work on it too. Mark Lamming. There's a lot of great artists who worked on me with that book. But I still because Ron and I launched it and did a lot of the issues together, I still kind of think of it as mine and Ron's run. But having all of it in one place, it just feels like, Marvel doesn't do that for runs that aren't significant and important. And so it's going to cost them a lot of money to make it, and who knows how many they'll sell, and so on. But I will have one. I will have it on my shelf. My shelf will be like this because it'll be so heavy, but that's okay. So yeah, I'm really excited about it.
Pedro de Mercader asks you, how did your background as an attorney serve you in creating comics? Find it. I'm translating on the run when I'm reading. Sorry.
Yeah.
And it must have similarities, given that you have to create some storytelling around the truth of a case, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, I put like Blind Spot in Daredevil had immigration issues, and in She-Hulk, I built a whole immigration case around Victor Von Doom's son, and like I did those. I mean, the She-Hulk run and the Daredevil run were very law focused, so there's a direct application of my own experience and skills into telling the stories, because I know the law and I can tell stories around it. But also, the law gives you discipline. If you're going to do it well, you have to be very detail focused. You have to do this thing where you sit down and you don't stand up until the work is done. And so, you can take little breaks here and there or whatever, but basically you have to be very focused, and you have to be able to think through the brief or the task from many, many, many angles, which is something you really need to do in storytelling as well. You need to think about the story you're telling from the perspective of all the different characters involved and so on. So I was surprised to see it, but I think that the sort of the discipline and the analysis that law gave me is still to this day helps me think through the stories that I'm telling in a way that's been very productive.
Dude, and also aside of the work you do, you did before for DC, you would do now for Marvel. There's been a constant in your career that you've always been doing your own stuff, your creator own stuff, aside of the novels. I mean in comics. So how important has it been for you to always have your feet in separate baskets, like using your muscles, creating muscles, not only for Star Wars, Daredevil, etc., but also for your own stuff?
Very, very important. I mean, crucial, because I love working with the big icons, whether they're Star Wars or Wolverine or Daredevil or Superman, you name it. But other people made up those stories. And when I do them, I get both a boost from the fact that there have been 75 years of amazing Superman stories before I got my hands on him, or 40 some years of Daredevil stories before I got to do it. So I get to benefit from the goodwill that all those other creators generated. But if I'm doing my own stories, whether it's Undiscovered Country with Scott Snyder or Curse Words with Ryan Brown, and also of course Giuseppe Camicoli, I can't believe it left him out. So anyway, yes, on Undiscovered Country it's me, Scott, and Giuseppe. On Curse Words it's me and Ryan Brown. I'm doing a new book with Will Sliney called Hell to Pay. All of these books, actually Letter 44 with Alberto Jimenez Albuquerque, who is from Madrid, who I need to hang out with soon. I miss him. We need to do another book soon. So all of those stories, you get a certain amount of freedom with them that you don't get when you're telling a story about Wolverine or Darth Vader or something like that. And so it is kind of you do it without a safety net, because it's all your ideas, all your characters, all the designs come from the artists. None of it is stuff you already know people love. You don't get any of that on those crutches, right? But you can do anything you want. And it feels very freeing and exciting to do it that way. I really like it. So I get something very powerful from both company work and from creator-owned work, and I intend to do both forever, I guess. I do feel like there has been a sort of a shift toward more of my own stories recently, between my novels before Light of the Jedi, I have the Oracle Year and Anyone. The only comics licensed work I'm doing right now is for the Star Wars line at Marvel. I used to do much, much more of it, but now I have 3 or 4 creator-owned series going. So it's like that, I think, is the arc I like. So I'll do some licensed stuff if they want me to, while also doing mostly my own stories, because that's ultimately, as you get older, I'm never going to own Superman, right? I'm never going to own Darth Vader. I'm never going to have a piece of those stories, really. But I own Hell to Pay with Will. I own Undiscovered Country with Scott and Camo. Those are kind of the investments in my long-term future that are really important to be making, especially when you have a career where people are paying attention to you.
And there's also a part of it, I guess, that is, and I'm sorry I interrupted you.
It's okay.
It's a part of it that is, the older you get, then maybe this is going to sound grim, sorry, but it's, there's a certain limited amount of time you have left. So you
Yes.
start thinking about, do I want to keep telling other people's characters' stories, or do I want to shift bit by bit more to my own, right? To my own legacy in a way.
It's a legacy that is true creatively. So the way I want to feel about the stories that I've told in my life, but it's also a legacy, like it's your retirement account.
Exactly.
You know, so the amount of upside to like a novel like The Oracle Year for me personally versus something like, you know, Death of Wolverine, both of which were very important to me, you know, and helped me in very specific ways, or even, you know, I don't know, any big Marvel or DC comic story I've done, a successful superhero comic is a big deal and you can do very well from it. But in terms of long term, you know, because the thing is, okay, so there's only one Oracle Year, right? I wrote it. And so whatever happens with that story is going to come to me.
Yeah.
But Daredevil, I did a great run, a really long run. I'm super proud of. They're doing that big omnibus for it. But Chip Zdarsky and Marco Cocchetto are making Daredevil now. And so there's always another team that's creating new Daredevil stories that make mine a legacy story that, you know, it's just the way it goes. And it's not bad. I love it because I got my shot at those characters. But expecting Daredevil to take care of me in my old age, it's not going to happen. You know, it just won't. But the Oracle Year might, and anyone might, and Undiscovered Country might. And so, and particularly, so you build up a stack of those that get higher and higher and higher. And the Oracle Year doesn't have to be as successful as like Daredevil or whatever for it to be, because it's just part of a wall between me and financial ruin in my old age. So I want as many bricks in that wall as possible. And that means as many stories as possible under my own name and the names of my wonderful co-creators.
Absolutely. I was talking to Jimmy and Amanda Palmieri and Amanda Corner, you know, when they were here some months ago, and we're talking exactly about that, you know, how important it is for DC and the DC extended universe, their vision of Harley Quinn, what they did, how they changed the character, and how that Harley Quinn that you see in the movies, it's their Harley Quinn.
It's theirs. Yep.
But there's, you know, I always said they should be named as co-creators. The Harley Quinn we see everywhere, it's theirs. It's not the original one. And but you know, that's never going to happen. And that's why Jimmy said, and that's why after Harley Quinn, you see us doing our own creator own stuff more and more, unless, you know, if they call us to do more Harley Quinn, we'll always do it because we feel it's ours in a way, even if DC doesn't. But in other stuff, we do more and more on our own stuff because we saw with that we need our own legacy. We need that, you know, like you said, that small piece is going to give you the possibility for retirement. And Harley is just giving them a thank you, if they're lucky, in the end credits.
In the credits. It's you know, look, I appreciate all of the things that Marvel and DC and Lucasfilm and all of it have given me. And I went into it with eyes open. I'm an attorney. I know what the deals mean. I understand it all. I understand it all.
Exactly what you were getting yourself into, of course.
Yes, and it's also really fun. It's joyful. I love all of the superhero stories I've written, but it needs to be a balance, and you need to think about the way that you plan out your career, and you know, you are being very well paid to do a wonderful job when you work for Marvel or DC. But it is not a job that is designed to take care of you for the rest of your life. It's just not. And so you have to think of it in a way of like, you know, giving Jimmy and Amanda giving that version of Harley Quinn to DC, basically. It helped them in certain ways that are somewhat intangible. But at a certain point, you know, you don't want it to be intangible. You don't want to be doing conventions when you're 95 years old because you don't have any choice, and you're trying to, you know, like I love going to shows. I love the fans. I love all of it. But there's going to be a certain point where I don't want to need it that way.
Yes, need it. That's the word. Yes, exactly. You don't want to need it. You want to go if you want to, but not feeling like you're 80 and I need to go because I need to make money.
Yes, you know, I don't want to be. I want to try to make smart choices throughout my entire career so that at a certain point, I can rest, you know, because I love being a writer. I love the work I do, but it can be really exhausting and stressful and straining. And I'm working so hard now while I'm still have a little youth left in me, so that when the youth is a little less, I don't have to go quite so hard. So
you just want to have the peak, right? You know, the choice that, as we say, when you get older, to be able to pick, do I want to do that convention or not feel like I'm going to have to go because I need the money to survive, right?
Yeah, I love the hustle. Okay, I love the hustle of trying to get a great new gig. I love pitching. I love at a convention. I even love the hand sell, right? So somebody comes to your table, they're like, "What is letter 44?" And you say, "Well, letter 44, I'll tell you." And then they buy it, and it feels so good. And that, I sell the letter 44 book at my table for I think $20 signed, like the collection. So, I could probably do better, make more money if I were to like at home writing a story or something like that with that amount of time. But it feels good. It feels great. And so I keep doing it, and I miss it, and I want to do it again. Do I want to be doing it in 20 years? Do I want to be doing it in 30, 40 years? Do not. So I do not. And I know that, and I know the kind of life I want to have at this stage and the next stage and the next stage and the next stage. And I think whenever you're thinking about your creative career, you can't just think about it you need to think about it along the whole timeline all the time. You think about it for today, you think about it in the past, and then you think about it in the future along the whole thing. So today you should be visualizing what your retirement is like if you are in a real creative career.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't, one of the biggest problems in comics, and you know it even better than I do, is people's short-term view. And I don't mean only publishers. Publishers, they need to keep, as Dandy D always told me, one of the things that people don't want to see or they don't see is that my work was to keep the machine cranking at all times. So sometimes I had to make decisions that I didn't like myself, but I saw that was the only way to keep the machine cranking, and I was the publisher. There was nobody above me. It had to be my decision. So publishers have short-term vision sometimes because they need to. But in many cases, we see, and that's something that you and I have fought a lot, and, giving people wedges and telling them to think. A lot of creators say, stop thinking about tomorrow. It's fine that you think about tomorrow, but stop thinking only about tomorrow. You have to think long-term. And many comic creators, as you know, they just literally, they don't.
Yeah, well, it's tough. It's a mindset, and it's hard to think about things that way, particularly because the hustle is so, you always kind of have to, especially for artists, right? Like until you get to a certain level, I guess writers too, but like comics is a hustle business. Comics is a business where you always have to be scrambling. What is the next job? What is the next job? And if you're lucky, you have 2 jobs lined up and you're in demand enough so that that you will, once you get to a certain point, either because you sign an exclusive with Marvel or DC. I mean, that's why artists sign those deals, and that's why writers sign those deals, because they know, okay, this gives me 2 years or 1 year or 3 or 4 years. I was a 4-year exclusive at Marvel. And so that meant that while a lot of my creative output went to Marvel, it meant that for those 4 years, what that gave me was I could scale down my law practice because I knew I would have that income from writing, and eventually close my law practice. I closed my law practice toward the end of that exclusive. And I also had the security of knowing that I could be building my name through the Marvel super famous characters to a point where then I could launch creator-owned series in a really big way. And it all worked out that way. But I think some people take the Marvel or DC exclusive and think that they have won. They've succeeded and they don't need to think about anything after the Marvel or DC exclusive, because those don't last. Like there's, unfortunately, it seems to work more with artists than it does with writers. Like, Adam Kubert and Andy Kubert, like they have careers for, forever, as they should,
Absolutely.
And Jesus, right? He will work as long as he wants to work. Steve McNiven, but writers, they become more like, they're more fashionable, and today's hot writer is not necessarily tomorrow's hot writer, and you have to be really smart to be able to navigate comics to stay in. I've been in comics for, my first thing was published in 2009, so I've been in comics for 12 years, which is a pretty long career for a writer to be.
I've been doing this for 22 years, and believe me, your run is a good one.
Yeah, so to be at a point where I'm still writing A-list material for Marvel, and having, you know, the success with the creator-owned books that I have. It's really hard to do, and it's not unique. There are other writers who have done it, but it requires a lot of smart planning and a lot of smart decision making. And I do not think that you can rely on something like that if you're going to get into a career in comics. So people should be, you know, I've been very lucky, I guess is what I should say. And so I think people should be aware that, you know, you don't measure yourself in comics by like Brian Michael Bendis, who's been in comics for, God, 30 years at this point, right? We know him, we love him, he's incredible. You know, he is a legend for a reason. Or, you know, Alan Moore, you know, you name it, right? But you cannot expect that your career in comics is going to be that career. And so you need to think about it as if, well, I'm going to get into comics, and then that's a milestone, and where can that milestone take me? Much the same way that in a law career, you get a job at a big firm, but the odds of you making partner at that big firm are very limited because there aren't that many spaces. And so you have to think, okay, what can this firm give me, or what can Marvel or DC give me for this amount of time, which is probably all I'm going to get there. And then what is my second act and my third act and my fourth act? And for me, it was get a great law degree, work at a law firm, open my own practice, use that to transition into a creative career, working for hire for Marvel and DC, and then use that to transition into working for a career where I basically work for myself and I can say no to anything I want, give or take, you know? Mm-hmm. And then the next thing from that was get out of comics, get into novels. And then the next thing from that is basically get into, you know, other forms of writing, TV and film, which is also stuff that I'm doing now. So like, but if you would ask me back at the beginning, I probably could have mapped this out then. And it's, you know, it's always thinking about where are the next milestones and then the 10 milestones after that and making choices that will hopefully achieve them all.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, the paths can deviate, but there's always got to be a grand plan. So you can, you know, if things shift in front of you, to be able to, you know what, my end goal is the same. I just gotta go with the flow, right?
Yes. All right. I am actually running a little tight on time, unfortunately. I have to. Okay,
I didn't know that. So let's go with some questions. And
yeah.
Let me see, Pedro Mercader. How did you decide how was Wolby going
to die?
That one is hard to kill.
Well, I had a thought that was a different way to do it initially. And I explored that, and I'm like, that just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel grand. It doesn't feel poetic. And then I thought, okay, think. You know, what can be the way that he would die that would feel appropriate for him, and also kind of pay tribute to him in a way. And so I came up with the adamantium idea because adamantium is what gives him his strength. And so I thought it could also be really interesting if adamantium could be what killed him as well. And then I had the idea of, okay, what if he actually becomes a literal like icon, that he is a tribute to himself, a tribute to his own legacy, a tribute to his own history that can never be destroyed, and that's adamantium. So making him an adamantium statue seemed like it would really work well. And obviously Steve McNiven drew the hell out of it. Justin Ponzer did the initial colors on that. It looked incredible, and it became an icon within the Marvel universe that stayed for a long time and made me really happy, and I think it worked.
Absolutely. Kate Robinson, it seems that you had to navigate a lot of false starts in your career path. Has any part of that journey given you tools to work with both in writing and life you could not have had otherwise?
Yes, I think I mean, this question came in before I talked about my whole master plan. And I think that I would not consider the law a false start. I would consider it a necessary step to be where I am today. And I think that that's true of all things that happen in your life, good and bad, because everything that's happened to you, every choice you've made, the way you work through things, bring you to the moment you're in right now. So the only real regret I have about law is that I still have those student loans I mentioned earlier. Like I still am paying for it, but it gave me connections and skills and security, financial security for a while I was getting into my creative career. I don't know that I would have the space. I don't know that I would have the career I have today if I didn't go to law school because, well, for many reasons. You know, you learn how to network, you learn how to understand the systems behind the systems, you learn how to see things that maybe other people don't see, and you get all that in law school. So, I don't know. I think everything you do gives you the tools to work in life. Failures, successes, all of it.
Mhm. Says David Rubio Matallanes asks, have Lucasfilm contacted you about the Star Wars? They would tell stories very close in the time to some of yours during the future Disney Plus shows. Like he's
Right.
going to answer that. No, I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
I can't really talk about that. I will say that I love doing Star Wars stories. I mentioned this before, and I intend to do them for a long time to come, as long as they'll let me, in whatever way they'll let me tell them. So there you go.
But David, don't ask. You shouldn't have those things. I know you guys want to know, but shh, we got to be careful. Tim Burnham, always happy to spread the word about your projects, he says.
Yep.
And Oscar Silence Death, hi Charles, love your work. What's your favorite issue from your Darth Vader Dark Lord run?
I think probably issue 18, which was a standalone issue in which Tarkin, Grand Moff Tarkin, goes on like a safari hunt, and the quarry is Darth Vader. So they're on this planet, and it's like the most dangerous game. The idea that hunting man is the scariest hunt you can do, and so you have Tarkin hunting Darth Vader on this like predator planet, and I think it worked really well. I feel like it's beautifully drawn again by Camo. I'm really, really proud of that one.
Mm-hmm. Blake Raybal asks, I think using a pun, what comics do you still revisit to feed your soul?
There's a lot that I had my formative time in comics, like many of us do, and I had like a bunch of formative times in comics, but one of the most key times for me as a comic reader was like when I was in college going up into law school. And so because I was a college student, so I had time, and so I read things like Sandman, and I read things like Preacher, and I read things like a lot of those Vertigo stories from back then, a lot of Alan Moore work, a lot of Frank Miller work. And so those are always still like they kind of, I'm not really that kind of writer, but I sort of am that kind of writer. And you can see where those stories influenced my writing now. And then the other big writer like that the other two big writers like that would be the Bryans. It's Brian K. Vaughan and Brian Michael Bendis. I came out of the sort of Neil Gaiman, Alan Moore, Warren Ellis, Grant Morrison phase and went right into the Brian Bendis and Brian K. Vaughan stage. And so, it gave me a lot of, I don't know. I learned a lot from those stories, and so when I go back to them now, I can remember very vividly what it felt like, what my life was like during those times. I was in school, I was learning, I was changing, I was seeing the possibilities of comics, and those always make me feel good to reread.
Mm-hmm. So last one, and I'll let you go before you kill me. Has there been any stories that, or any particular story that you have always had inside you, but you've always stopped, like saying, I'm still not ready. I'm not ready to tell this story yet, but that in your heart of hearts that you are going to tell that story before you retire or die. That's always been in you, but sooner or later it's going to come out.
Yes, I do think so. I think I have. So I spent time growing up in Hong Kong. And I was a teenager there, and it was really, really formative for me. And it changed me drastically. It made me into a new person, kind of. And so my next novel, my fourth novel, touches on that a little bit, but I think that there's another story that I will tell at some point about what it was like to be sort of a young person in Hong Kong after having been I came from Midwest America, which is it's beautiful, and it's culturally specific and all of that, but could not be more different from Hong Kong. And so going from that to Hong Kong and who it made me and how it changed me and how it changed my family and all of those things, that's a story that when I'm ready, I look forward to finding a way to tell in a way that will connect with audiences. Maybe it's just a biography, I don't know, but that would be the one.
That could be the second part of that question. Do you even know how you're going to tell that story, or that's part of the process, or when you get there, you'll know?
Yeah, it might be through some other character's eyes, but I think it's very, very personal. All that stuff is very personal. So maybe, if I ever have enough fame that a biography of myself would be something people would want to read, then maybe I'll do that. But who knows?
Who knows? Okay, so thank you so much, Charles, for being here. Please don't cut, because I want to say proper thank you after we cut the live feed. And
sure.
So But first of all, thank you to all of you watching. Thank you for all your questions and comments, guys. As always, you're amazing. And see you back on Thursday with Spanish genius and one of the best creators in the world, Max. Winner of all the awards you can think about. The Ignats in the US. In Spain, he was the national award given by the Ministry of Cultures to the biggest creators. Anything you can imagine, Max has done it. So on Thursday, el jueves, aquí con Max. And that's all for today. Wear your mask. Again, don't be assholes. Be decent with people. Care for each other. And again, thank you again, Charles, for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And we're off, guys. Take care. See you back on Thursday. 3, 2,